Hey everybody, I'm Rick Beato. In today's episode, I have a special guest, someone who I've known for years but who's never been here to the studio. It's the one and only keyboard wizard, Jordan Rudess. Jordan is obviously known from his work with Dream Theater, but he's does so many different things on the forefront of music technology, and he's here to show me what he's been working on lately. Here's my interview. Jordan, welcome.
Hey, Rick.
How are you?
Made it.
You made it. All right. What were we just hearing here?
This is GeoShred. This is an application that I did actually when I was a visiting artist at Stanford.
Okay.
And I met some of the guys there, amazing people like Dr. Julia Smith, who invented physical modeling. So when I met the guys, they were like, we should make something together.
Okay.
And I had this vision that actually started out as a thought that I wanted to be able to go between diatonic and a fretless mode really, really easily.
Okay.
Always turned on by players like Jeff Beck or Steve Vai, and I thought, man, it's got to be possible on a touchpad to do that.
Yeah.
First time I laid my hands down on a surface like this, I was like, wow, all my fingers can move in different ways, vertically, horizontally, independent control. So I called up a developer, not these guys yet, and I started to talk about this idea. So that was like 15 years ago.
Okay.
And I had an app called MorphWiz, which was actually like a predecessor to MPE as we know it today.
Yeah.
So when I met these guys, I was like, yes, we will use physical modeling. And I've got this concept in my head where we can have this amazing sliding, and we can also be able to play any kind of diatonic things and really have it be accurate. So GeoShred really specializes in that. So it's kind of a combination between the type of playing surface that's here and also the technology. And it's kind of like a really great marriage of the two ideas. Because what's happening in GeoShred is that whenever I play a note in one of these little squares, when my finger first goes down in the note, it's going to be perfectly in tune. And as soon as I move my finger, then it will vibrato from that spot. So if I play like something like this, like the note's in tune. And as soon as I move, it'll track. So if I go, right, every note is absolutely in tune.
It's perfectly tuned. As soon as you touch it, and then it will activate the.
Yeah. As soon as I start to move, it goes, oh, okay, let's vibrato from that spot.
Yes.
That's one part of it. The other part that really is the secret sauce, if you will, it's what happens is if you slide from one note to the next, like if I go, as soon as my finger stops,
Yep.
it'll magically nudge it into
Perfectly back in pitch.
Yeah, perfect pitch. So I can do all these crazy, crazy bends. And because it's a physical model, I can also get that whole kind of organic reaction that happens when a guitarist goes over to his amp and starts to get feedback. Because, the guys figured out the mathematics for that. So on my little expression pad here, if I play a couple notes and I give them some love, first of all, that's exciting the model in itself.
Yeah.
And creating, much like a guitar, right? So I'm exciting the model, and then I do this. And I can start to get it to feedback.
Yeah.
Come on, yeah, there we go. And then I can be like... And the other trick here that I'm doing is this. Feedback. There we go. Yes. So it's all this kind of very organic.
It's kind of like a guitar, though.
I mean, when I'm playing it, I totally feel that kind of wild energy, like I'm just controlling this beast.
Interesting. So, because this is flat and it has a glass surface, the frictionless kind of feel of it is...
And it's really interesting because, I've played all of the different controllers, the Seaboards and Linstruments and Osmos, and I love them all.
Yeah.
I have nothing really bad to say about any of those, but I will say that when my finger slides on the glass,
it totally
perfect.
makes sense.
It totally makes sense.
Yeah,
it's
that
like
makes sense.
It's meant to be.
Right.
Would I like, a little bit more like haptic feedback? Well, yeah, and that's a technology I'm sure we'll see as we move on. Like if I tried it with my eyes closed, that's a little hard to do.
Yeah.
Right? But just as far as sliding around.
Great.
Yeah, you do like guitar stuff, like, like this kind of. But what's cool is you can start going like. So what's interesting about this is, so I put this out and I work with my Stanford team, and then it really caught on in India.
Okay.
Because the guys there realized that they could do the most amazing...
microtones.
Microtones and just control a pitch. So now there's this whole thing where people are incredible players are playing this, not because of like the Steve Vai, Jeff Beck kind of mentality, but because they want to get in there and do all their incredible stuff.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of videos of people just, ripping it up in Carnatic music and doing cool stuff. And just very briefly before we talk about other things, this has a million different instruments in it, all kinds of lovely ethnic instruments.
Beautiful.
And the little spaces here can be as large or as small as you want. So if you wanted to do something like have a larger area to really express yourself, you could do something like this, like. There's a whole lot of room.
Jordan, do you buy this at the App Store? Where do you buy it?
This is an app you can buy in the App Store.
Okay.
And also, we just came out with it for desktop.
Okay.
Which is good news for a lot of people, because people want access to the really cool models that are there, and now you can play it from your keyboard easily and all that kind of stuff.
And you can control the pitch bends and everything with your whatever
Yeah, yeah, you can
whatever
play
you
it
have
from
on there.
your standard synthesizer, or ideally you have an iPad because there's nothing like sliding around.
That's right.
But depending on the kind of music you're playing and the kind of musician you are, you might prefer doing it from a keyboard.
Yeah.
So one of the things I love to do is I like to build technology that also makes it possible for people who are not musicians to experience the joy of making music.
Yeah.
I think that's a really cool thing.
Absolutely.
So one thing that I did here is I have stuff like this, where you have just the notes of the scale that you want on here. So you really can't, play a quote unquote wrong note. So you can be like, so now I'm just rocking the blues scale, right? So if you just slide around without looking, we're totally in blues mode. You start the backing track. So. And right now it's snapping, so it's like rounding when I move like this. It's not sliding.
Wow.
But I can put it in slide mode, so now. Like that.
That's amazing. Okay, so let's talk about this new passion project that you have. Let's talk a little bit of AI here. Tell me what you're doing.
Yeah, so, I'm very into technology. I have been ever since kind of like discovering the Mini Moog way back when.
Yeah.
You probably know this, but maybe some people who are watching don't. So I was a classical piano prodigy. I went to Juilliard when I was 9, and I was going to be a classical pianist, and I stayed on this very straight and narrow course. My teachers told me all along to never talk to those people, the rock musicians, the blues musicians. They're all lowlifes, drug addicts, drunks, and everything. Stay away. That was like constant,
Sure.
This is what, you need to do. So, when I was about 17 or 18, my friends started to get a little frustrated that I was not, like cool and like listening to a lot of rock and all that stuff. So they started to expose me to like Genesis and Yes and King Crimson and Emerson, Lake and Palmer. Of course, Keith Emerson is my hero. And, so that really started to change my whole mindset. So at some point, I decided I really had to get a Mini Moog. And I was bugging my parents for it until one day they figured out, how to do it. At the same time, I was figuring out what to do about college because I was going to the Juilliard preparatory division.
Yeah.
And everybody wanted me to go to the college.
Yeah.
And what ended up happening is I auditioned for the college. I got in. My teacher was Adele Marcus, this kind of like crazy, intense piano teacher who told my parents that he's going to emerge early on the classical music scene. But meanwhile, I'm thinking about Mini Moogs and all that kind of stuff. So the day came when she assigned me the Chopin G minor ballade, and the next week I came in to play it, and I'm playing, through it, and she came over and she took the music away, and I stopped. And she said, well, why'd you stop? And I said, well, I stopped because it's a 30-page piece, and I've only been playing it for a week. She said, well, when you study with Adele Marcus, you have to memorize things the first week. So I thought about my Mini Moog and Close to the Edge and Tarkus and all these things I really wanted to do. And I said, you know what? I got to get out of here. This is not it. So I ended up breaking away from that lifestyle and just kind of like making space music on my Mini Moog and turning knobs and just going for it. So, but since that point,
not knowing where it was going to lead.
Not knowing at all. And my
Right.
career actually started very late. Like I'm in a band with the Dream Theater guys who they became successful very young.
Yeah.
But that was not me because, again, I was told not to hang out with any of these people. So I didn't know what to do.
Right.
I knew I was into these kind of sounds and to all this cool stuff, this new music, but I didn't know how to put it all together. Luckily, I could always play a tune, a show tune, a song from a movie. And so I could get gigs and keep myself floating and alive while I kind of figured it out. So to make a long story short, so I had a period of time where I even worked for the synthesizer companies. I worked for Korg, I worked for Kurzweil as a product specialist.
Okay.
And it was great because it was a way for me to kind of get to the shows, get to the NAMM shows, and write pieces that would highlight these instruments and learn how these instruments work in a really
this makes
deep
sense
way.
now.
So that's how, Keyboard Magazine started to write about me, and people started to say, oh, that guy Jordan and all this stuff, and my name was starting to spread around. I won the Best New Artist when Keyboard Magazine was really a thing, and eventually that's one of the ways that the Dream Theater guys found me. But of course, the first thing that happened with them is I joined Liquid Tension Experiment.
Yeah.
And I had 2 very successful rock instrumental albums with that. And then I joined Dream Theater the second time they asked me. Some people don't know that.
Okay.
They asked me before the LTE stuff, after they had done Awake, and at that point it just wasn't right yet. So I said no, and I joined the Dregs, the Dixie Dregs.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah, so I had like a year of touring with the Dregs. And of course I just did another tour with the Dregs recently.
That's right.
After however many years it
remember
was.
that.
But anyway, so all along, I've always been so sensitive to sound, the kind of person who you hear a sound and go, oh, that's a cool sound, that's a cool sound. And also very tactile, maybe coming from the piano background. So, when I laid my hands down on the first surface, like an iPod or an iPhone, I was like, oh my God, there's some really cool things I can do with this. So that led into the whole GeoShred thing and all that kind of control. But also I've always been an improviser all along. Even at Juilliard, I would go to the furthest practice room away from my teacher's studio, and I would play whatever came into my head, and I'd bring my friends, and I'd play boogie woogie and blues and, just the craziness going on inside my mind. And I always kept that going. So altogether, this interest in sound and this interest in improvisation and different ways to control things led me to getting some great opportunities in the music tech space. And the first thing that I kind of did that got me into the whole creation of GeoShred is I was a visiting artist at Stanford University at their Karma division, and I worked with Julia Smith and Pat Scandalis and Nick Porcaro, all these amazing guys who invented physical modeling and all that. And then more recently, I connected with MIT and the Media Labs. And that's been incredible because I have my eyes on what's going on in technology. I was like, this AI thing, I could do something cool with that. How about if I teach it to play like a Jordan kind of style? Maybe I could train it with some of the quote unquote rules I have in my head. Maybe I could actually teach those rules to the machine and get it to do what I do and then interact with it. And that was my vision. So we presented that vision to MIT, and they were very responsive. And so I got a visiting artist position there, and I ended up hooking up with these amazing people, Joe Paradiso, who runs the Responsive Environments Group, and his PhD researchers. One of them we're lucky to have here with us today that'll help me to demonstrate what we're doing. So we're doing this incredible kind of interactive AI. We've been training the model to kind of understand a lot about the way I think about music. And so when we first started, it was kind of oh my God, is this ever going to work? And it was funny because I do something and it's oh no, it's not happening. And I remember the day that Lancelot and I were in the studio, and I played something, and then it played back something, and I was like, oh my God, this thing works.
It learned.
It learned. So here we are actually today, and we've got something that I think is really representative of where this could go. It's really exciting. It's fun for me. It's really creative. It shows you that there really is a very positive direction for all this technology. There's a lot more to do. There's a lot more work to teach it more dynamics, to teach it how to mold styles together and all that stuff. But we have some cool stuff to talk about and show today of this project. And Lancelot is here actually with us.
Lancelot?
Here he is.
Hey.
All right.
How are you?
Eric, I'm good. How are you doing?
Good.
So Lancelot is the one who did all the audio programming, all the AI audio programming, and built the model. So I would send him all these MIDI files of me very methodically expressing an idea, basically improvising, but I'd say, okay, I want to do my Bach meets Jordan kind of style. And I would do it, and I would play continuously for maybe 30 minutes. And I would just kind of go from chord to chord in different ways, the ways that I would do it. And I kind of got good at ways to train the model. And of course, Lancelot is good at what he does once I give him all the information.
Okay, so how does this work exactly? You're going to demonstrate this?
Should we demonstrate it first and then talk about it?
Yeah,
okay,
let's do
cool.
that.
So the first model that we're going to do, so I've always enjoyed playing this kind of like counterpoint like thing, and I just improvise it. And I thought, well, it'd be really cool to like have the model learn a little bit about that. Okay. So what's going to happen now is the model is fully capable to generate stuff on its own, but that's not that interesting to me. What's really interesting is for me to do something and the model to go, oh, he did that. Okay, well now I'll go from there and maybe take a little bit of what I did and introduce a new idea. And then I have to be on my toes to respond. So this is a back and forth kind of thing. And I'm just going to improvise and we're going to see what happens. And sometimes my model, the Jambot, the Jordan model plays well. Other times, we'll see. Let's give it a go. Gets excited, so the first beat is something. I was going to resolve. Come on. Okay, I'll do it here.
Okay, explain to me what is going on here.
What is going on,
how does it know what to do?
So, again, the training, and I'm going to bring Lancelot in to help explain it maybe more technically, but the training is all my literally just playing. I literally would sit at the keyboard. Is this sound on? I'll do it on the piano. So I would just sit and I would be like... I literally did that I was improvising without stopping for 30 minutes. So, and that's a challenge in itself.
It is.
So AI is not that easy. So just going off, doing it, and thinking about how do I want to really teach this student this AI. And then I would take the MIDI file and I'd send it off to Lancelot and he would feed it into the machine. And then we would feed it in not only from the key, let's say I started here, he would feed it in from here, right?
Okay.
And, let it kind of churn for, overnight, a couple days. And then, and then the magic happens.
Lancelot, are they algorithms? How does AI work? What is the...
Yeah, so, I think you described it super well. I think basically the way you can see this is it's kind of a ChatGPT of music, but it's retrained only on Jordan's data. And the idea is that it's retrained to mimic Jordan's improvisational style. So here you see the most conversational way of jamming with the model, which is you take 4 bars each, you take 1 bar each or something. And what it's trying to do is just based on the notes that Jordan is playing, predict the few notes that are the most probable to follow. And through this, because Jordan has so many improvisational style, this is like one of them. This is like the Baroque style. It's trying to like copy this kind of style and, you know, propose ideas that might be interesting and might like reflect what Jordan is like trying to, you know, play at the moment.
Where are all these things stored? Is it a program? I still don't understand this. Talk to me like I'm a dumb guy. Well, because that's very easy, actually. Is the whole AI program? Is it a program? Like I can't wrap my head around this thing. Like, is it all on that laptop there?
It is running on the laptop here.
I mean,
My mind is inside that laptop.
I mean, right?
It's crazy, right?
Yeah.
No, it's crazy, and yeah.
And we're discussing, you know, the idea is that potentially it could become, you know, part of like, even as part of the keyboard, you have like the Jordan cartridge or like any other cartridge, and you just want to be able to like jam with this person.
Eventually, maybe inside like a Nautilus, you have a program that has that intelligence in it, and you'd be able to get some reaction like that and jam. But one of the amazing things about this is that, okay, so I trained it. I did all my things, you know, all the Jordanism things.
Yes,
it was like, you know, I felt like I was teaching a student. And at first it was a baby. And it wasn't, and I was like, is this ever, like literally asking him, is this ever really going to work?
Yeah.
He's like, give me another file, give me some more. And the end result is fascinating. And it's worth talking about because people don't understand how this works. So this is not playing back verbatim what I've done. There's nothing that it plays that's exactly what I played. And not only that, it plays things that I'm kind of like, oh, that's cool. Right. So it takes my information, it takes the things that I gave it, and it puts it together in a different way. Much like if you have a student and you say, okay, you can play a riff like this, and here's another mode, and here's another, and these two modes connect, and they came back next week, and they're like, oh, well, what about connecting this one to that one? And I kind of go, wow, okay, well, this is great, because now I'm really learning something. And it's only my information.
Right.
And the model, the smarts behind it are just doing this amazing thing I'm just so grateful that I have the opportunity to use technology again in my life to bring myself up a notch. Not only with things like even just creating this back and forth, do I have to really pay attention and go, okay, well, you know, it played. Okay, it's there, and maybe I should go here. You know, like just to stay on it, because it could make a change at the very last second.
Right.
Which is intense, and you know, here we are, and we're filming and everything, and for me it's like a great experience because it trains me to, you know, really be focused.
Is an analogy kind of what we were talking about with the guitar, where it's learning just as you're learning all those little mechanical moves that you do, and then the AI program keeps learning the more input
the more you give it.
The more you give it, the more it starts to understand, okay, this is where he might go, or this is where it goes. Does it have its own mind then?
Well, that's the big question. Do you feel like it has its own mind? I mean, we used to call it Baby Jordan, right?
Yeah, now it's a teenager.
Okay.
It's definitely a teenager now, because it works. You can see it works.
Yeah.
It gets excited on the first beat and kind of plays, you know, sometimes. But, you know, okay, so we have more work to do. But, I mean, literally, when we started, I would go like... And it would go like... I'm like, no. And so we kept, you know, working with it until we got to this point.
Okay, so I'm going to ask this again. Is it a program? Is it?
I mean,
how do you explain it?
I guess it's a program. Basically, it's like, you know, it's a big, complex neural network, a big, complex program that's trying to like just model a statistical distribution of like Jordan's playing, and just like tries to just sample from that distribution and create outputs that would resemble the training data, which is like here, Jordan's playing. But in that case, I think you can kind of think of it as like an instrument. So it is a program, but in the same way that like a synthesizer is a program. It's kind of, the idea here is that it's something that you play with to just kind of like, you know, practice, to just perform or something like this. So
it's predictive, like a large language model would be predictive of what word will be next, and this is like what phrase will be next.
Yeah, you
like
can
that.
basically think of it the same way. It's just more of a music version of that kind of thing. Yeah, in the same way that, like, you know, does ChatGPT have a mind of its own? Probably not. It's just very good at like, probably not, definitely not. I'm saying, you know, it's definitely good at predicting things and creating patterns, and I think this is what it's doing in music. But I think it's interesting because language, like music, is just made of patterns, right?
On your laptop there, how big is this program? Is it a big program? Does it get bigger all the time as it learns?
It is getting better, bigger, because we're trying to make it better, right? So it's definitely
bigger and smarter, and I think he's getting smarter too by doing this. Because when we started, the computer was huge, and now he came here today, like with, when I had it at my house and I was running the models, it was a huge PC, and now we've just got it on a laptop. So everybody's getting smarter from this experience. We're just learning a lot. It's really exciting. And I should also say, because it's important, is as I was expressing before, like in my mind is very visual as well as sonic, and there's a whole visual element to this. When we did our final concert at my first visiting artist experience at the Media Labs, the concert was this audio, but also we have these kinetic sculptures that Lancelot's partner, Perry, does. And so it responds to the AI part. It kind of comes to life, and these looks like leaves were moving and breathing, and it's very, very cool. So, to always kind of keep those worlds.
And how long did it take to actually get to this point where it is now? How long have you been working on it?
We've been working on it for a bit over a year now, I think. Yeah.
That's not very long, really.
Not very long, and also, I'm kind of busy doing a lot of other things, and he's got his PhD thing going on. But we'd spent some good effort to do this, and we're at the beginning. So you think, well, it's doing this now,
right?
So
or
I'm
is it
looking
going
forward
to be
to
a year
next
from
year.
now?
Yeah. So our next mission is dynamics and pitch bending, and all the subtle things that make the real difference. Yes, you want to see another model?
Yeah.
As I said, so the models at this point are all different. At some point in the future, we'll put them all together. But this one's really, really fun because the way I trained it was I would play different chords, right?
Yeah.
And then I would play melodic kind of lead lines around it. And I would, again, kind of methodically go from chord to chord. Like I would do something like... I would try to connect it in a way that I would connect it. So from here, literally doing that for a long time, continuously, and making all those connections, and to where I felt like I could get. Basically, I would kind of show so many of the possibilities from chord to chord, what I do. So this model represents that, and in this particular improvisation, I'll be playing the chords, and my Jordan model will be playing the leads.
Okay.
So it'll be listening to my chords, and then hopefully, if it's it's a teenager, it can get rebellious and do some different things, but we'll hope for the best. It'll listen and it'll watch kind of like and be aware of what chord I go to and the pattern of chords, and do something that's musical.
Okay.
So all right, let's do it. Okay. Let's see. It didn't want to end. Hey, it
Amazing.
wanted to introduce the minor seventh. but
Okay,
that was
so
okay.
now with your ear, you can also hear what it's doing. So
Yeah.
you can react to it when it's doing those 2-5-1s and things like that.
Totally.
You hear it when it's playing those diminished skit lines or altered lines and everything. And you're
I'm extremely aware of
Yes.
the way it interpreted my chord. Well, I need to be because I'm kind of like the one to say that works, that doesn't work. I would never do that. That's not right.
Yeah.
And that's kind of what we're getting into a lot now is evaluating the model. So literally,
But you're helping it out, though, actually, in some spots, because you hear exactly what it
Yes,
played,
yes.
and then you say, okay, I know what it's
well,
playing
it's
here.
that's the whole beauty of this.
Yes.
It's an interaction. It's like
Yes.
if we were jamming together and I played this, and
yes,
you played,
that diminished line. That's right.
and you went there, and then
Yeah.
I had to,
Yeah,
you might go there, and then I'll go. So that's the beauty of it. That's
Yes.
why I really love it, because it's kind of like ear training for me.
Right,
But also
right.
it's showing me, like it plays some riffs that I'm like, that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
There's something to learn from that, or there's something that you can just enjoy creatively. It was like it was behaving well. My teenager,
Yeah.
is in a good mood today.
but this one you're not playing with a click on, so it's
I don't need
so
to
it's
play with a
really
click.
you
It's
don't need to play
just-
with a click
it's
because it's
freeform.
actually improvising on its own to what you play.
Yeah. And the temptation
wait, is it playing to what you play, or is it playing its own thing? It's playing its own thing.
Well, it's playing.
Based
I play
on
a
things
chord,
that you play.
and maybe when I
Yeah.
trained it, I might have gone. I mean, you notice that it is kind of like in my style.
It
Like
is in your style,
Some
yes.
people are more outside than
Yeah.
that's the way more jazz guys, and but that's not with the way this is trained.
Yeah.
Could be,
Yeah.
maybe we'll add to it or whatever. But I like the fact that it's in right now that it's.
Yeah.
I'm seeing what happens if we train it to be like what goes on inside my musical mind.
Yeah.
So it's really listening. It's really listening, and it's responding.
And you're listening,
offering-
too.
And I'm really listening, because if it does one of those kind of like, if it introduces, I've got to go, I got to be on my toes.
Yeah.
And that's the magic of improvising
It
as
is.
well, right?
Yeah.
I've always used technology to kind of expand who I am. Even like my keyboard technique, when I first discovered like the 8-bit computers, and I could record something and then quantize it and speed it up, I was like, wow, that's a cool sound. Amazing. I want to be able to play like that.
Right.
So I would kind of like take that sound and try to achieve it with my fingers. And I don't mind that the computer can play faster than me. For me, it's my journey. It's my musical output. It's the way I feel. And I'm just using these tools to kind of like, enjoy and expand and be creative and educate. And I think there's a lot to be said about, looking at this technology that, of course, we know is very controversial, and there's a lot of good reasons why it is. And we as a society need to be very careful about what we do with it. But as a musician and the person that I am, I feel it's important to help steer it and work with amazing, young, talented people like this that are also extremely musical and very caring and very thoughtful and sensitive. And that's kind of where we're at.
5 years down the road, when this thing has been trained even more, it's
Yeah.
going to really be able to play like you.
Well, then I'll be able to retire, and we can hang out
Well,
on a beach somewhere.
And then we'll just add the AI video part of it. You'll have the hologram or whatever it is, and
it'll be a good show.
It'd be a great show.
But let's say something. I actually had a conversation with a friend of mine who's really into AI the other day, and he made a really good point.
Okay.
And I loved it. And I brought up that as well. I said, this AI is going to get better and better. It's eventually going to be playing as well as I can play and maybe do things that I can't. But if you're going to see a concert, like the people who are coming out to see Dream Theater tonight, they're coming to see the human beings
Sure.
because there is a story there.
Right.
They've been following John Petrucci since they were a kid and playing guitar, and he's got a personality, and he's got everything that he's done in his life, and he's not perfect, and he'll make a mistake, and people love when a musician doesn't completely play exactly like what's in the plan. So I think that story aspect is so so important to our experience. And that's why AI is never going to replace the human being, because the AI doesn't have it might have its own story, but it doesn't have a story like a person does.
Right.
So as somebody who's really, really into AI and really into technology, I love it for what it is, and I'll use it for education, for entertainment, all those amazing things. But I will always respect and kind of like understand that there's a story in another human being, and that's really valuable to me. And also, I do all this crazy stuff, but I love sitting down at my piano. Like, to me, that's home base. If I can just sit in a quiet room and just kind of tune myself up with the piano, I love that. That might be my favorite thing of all of it. So.
And just adding something on the tech side as well, something that's interesting is that all those models, are just not nearly as good if you don't have the human input. Like, if you don't have the creative seed that's like Jordan, then it just doesn't sound good. It just becomes like boring very quickly. And I think that's what makes this technology very interesting, and also less scary and threatening for artists here in the way that we do it. Is that, so, with my colleague Perez, who's like this amazing artist who made this kinetic sculpture for this performance that we did last September. I think we're trying to design a whole, as Jordan said, like a whole live experience where you're not going to see an AI, you're going to see a human interacting with an AI, and just the AI by itself would just, at least for now, would be very boring. And I think this is, and you see this as well in like AI for visual arts. If you don't have the nice prompts, the nice creative seeds, it's not as good. And I think this is the key part, the key aspect of this is that, it's trained on Jordan's data, and it needs Jordan's input to just create something that's new and refreshing and fun. I think this is the nice part of it.
Once again, is the program self-contained, or are you accessing anything through the internet now?
No, it's all running here.
It's all running on.
That's incredible.
It's amazing.
Yeah.
It's just hard to wrap my head around.
It's amazing. I've been slowly but surely hanging out with these guys, wrapping my head around it. One thing that's a side note to what we're doing is I met some guys that Lancelot knows very well that are doing visual things with AI, and they can have like a prompt. And the way that the program works is the camera is like facing me. On one side of the screen is me, but you could say like John Lennon tripping on acid. And on the other side of the screen is John Lennon. And in real time, I'm moving my head, and you have like John Lennon with flowery colors and swirly things following my movements in basically real time. Maybe it's a matter of, 20 milliseconds, but you can type in whatever prompt you want. And the crazy thing is, doesn't need to be hooked up to the internet. That whole model that does that is there. And the reason is, you could explain it better, but the reason is because it's not actually image files that it's calling up. They've already done the scraping of all the data. Now it's just numbers. You say John Lennon, that's a number to the computer. That's not calling up an image, and it's pretty incredible.
Okay, so why is all the AI models that are people are using now, OpenAI, whatever it is, why do they need so much data, or why do they need these chips that are so fast? Is it just because they're calculating so many possibilities?
Well, definitely, and the models are just much bigger. Like what you've seen here, and you can see it goes out of key for now. It still makes sometimes weird decisions. Like, as we said, it's a teenager. I think all of this, there's two constraints. We made this decision because it needs to be really fast in real time, which is something that is the biggest challenge in this world in live music performances. And the way to tackle this is to just make models that are much smaller. So we usually talk about number of weights. This model, if this is in the area of 300 million weights. ChatGPT, GPT-4 is, I think, over 3 billion. Those models are just much bigger. Okay. And usually by scaling models more, you just make them better, at least for this type of model. It just means that it's harder to run in real time. It's harder to run locally, and you just need more of that computational power to train and to, make work.
And everything that we're doing is in MIDI. The AI is producing MIDI. I'm inputting MIDI, it's spitting back MIDI. Okay. So, the sound you're hearing, that's all fair game. You can have it whatever software plugin you want. Right. I chose that little clavichordish sound for the thing, but it could be anything because the model doesn't care. That's just sending out MIDI. And that was part of the way into that interactive kind of space by using MIDI.
Is this like a freestanding program that you open up to get started? Is it like a self-contained thing with an interface on the screen, or is that where it will be eventually?
I mean, it has a bit of an interface where you see me like just like tweaking stuff in the back.
Like I've used it myself at home.
Yeah.
It's just there's a screen you go to and you set up the parameters and you hit go.
Okay.
Definitely a lot of work on making it like as a nice looking plugin or something. But that's
But eventually it'll be a plugin.
Sure.
That's the idea.
And it's not that hard to get going now. It's
amazing.
I'll show you one other model.
Yeah.
This is fun because it's a different kind of thing. So this one is really cool because what it does is it looks at what I play. Like I'm going to play different lines, and then it's going to introduce a chord based on the last note that I play.
Okay.
And then I'm going to go off on that from that chord, and then I'll stop somewhere, and then it'll play another chord. And I think we set it up that I can trigger when I want the chord to happen.
Okay.
It's the ultimate ear training game.
Yeah. Beautiful.
Fun, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, like that.
Beautiful.
That cool?
Beautiful.
I love
That
it.
is the ultimate ear training thing.
The
there.
ultimate ear training. Imagine if you had that. Like when we did this, we were kind of in the mode of, okay, let's just, come up with the craziest kind of chord. Not crazy is the wrong word. More complicated kind of chords.
Yeah.
And the way that I trained it, literally, the way that I sent the data to Lancelot is I would take a C major scale, right? And every time I would play the next chord, I would include the next note of the C major scale.
Okay.
So kind of like, I'll make believe I'm training it now. So the first one might have been. And then I've got to go to D again.
Nice.
I'm on D again. So I would just keep on, and I think I did it to a click too. So it's like, I'm thinking, what am I do next?
Nice. Nice.
And I did that for,
was
30 minutes, right?
Yeah.
And so when I go, who knows? I might have done that. So that's the data that we put in there.
That's amazing.
Fun, right?
That's so cool.
It's hard to not think when you're checking these things out and listening to it and experiencing it. Okay, how would people use this? It's certainly fun for me. It's a little complicated. Not everybody's going to want to play it at this particular level,
right?
It's challenging me as well. But imagine if it was something where you could have a slider. Somebody's at the learning and you go. That would be nice. And the next level, whatever. If you had a little slider there, or even in a real-time performance, if I wanted
You
to
just
play
dial
like
up
a
the
lead
complexity,
line,
or
I almost like keyframes.
Yeah.
Like the beginning of my piece is, and then it starts getting. And you could have a whole shape to it, and when you come back to the beginning, and you're done. So a lot of ways to use this in performance or ear training or whatever. For us, it's just this, at the Media Labs at MIT, we're just on this discovery, kind of magical little voyage to see what's possible and what we can create.
will there be a tour eventually of this?
Well, my agent wants me to have, like robots on the stage playing, but of course that's not necessarily what we want to do. We're trying to be a little bit more creative. That's too what's the word I'm looking for?
Maybe dancing robots or something.
Dancing
Jordan.
robots. That's it.
Then you can interact with yourself, but you have dancing robots. Will be moving around to whatever the beat is.
Something visual. I mean, right now we have this guy Perry who does a beautiful thing with his moving leaves, and it's really very artistic and beautiful. The agent he's like, hurry up, put this on the road.
As you're touring, are you sending stuff to Lancelot?
I haven't done that on this tour yet, but we'll be doing that.
Basically, you'll send him what, MIDI information?
Yeah, I'll do MIDI files.
MIDI files.
Exactly. One of the we won't show it today, but one of the styles that we trained was like my more progressive kind of keyboards, with more chords and that I can do it back and forth as well.
Yeah.
Which is really, really fun. It has to relate to something that I do at this point, because it's me doing the thing, and I can play a lot of different styles, but of course I'm in my own window of possibilities. Luckily, it's not too small. I can do different things, which enables us to do this project.
Jordan, should we talk about your guitar a little bit for a second?
Sure, I'd love to. This has been about a 4-year journey so far, playing the guitar.
I remember when you started on Instagram.
Yeah, before that, I would occasionally walk into John Petrucci's room and say, "Oh, let me try that." And like one thing, I don't know where I put my pick, but I would just, because I have the dexterity from the piano, I just try to do that. That's all I knew how to do. Kind of mess around, and I would hand it back to him. I say, So the way that whole guitar thing started was that I was at this festival playing this concerto piece that I wrote with an orchestra in the Czech Republic. Part of that concert day was Pliny.
Yeah.
Right? So we were talking in between the shows and everything, and he was saying that, he said, you play guitar, right? And I said, well, I don't play the guitar. I said, I pick up John Petrucci's occasionally, I'll noodle around, but I never really played. He says, I have a guitar that you would love. I was like, what do you mean? I don't really play the guitar. He says, no, you're going to love this guitar. He says, it's a Strandberg. I said, oh. He says, I'm going to send you one. And I thought, okay, fine. So I got home, and then a month later, what shows up at my house? It's a Strandberg guitar.
Nice.
And I had it sitting there for about a year. It was just sitting in its case, because I don't play the guitar. One day I looked down at the thing, and I thought to myself, I could probably play that. And I picked it up, and from that point, I think I played the guitar almost every day.
Wow.
A little bit.
Amazing.
I'm kind of a believer that if you do something, every day, then it's gonna come together. So I'll sit and I'll be watching, a movie. My wife will watch the movie. I'll be doing this, and whatever, and I'll be practicing, all the kind of trying to, get my mechanic.
So, Jordan, you can learn to play an instrument at any age.
Look at that. I'm 68 years old.
Yes.
I started this really when I was 64 years old.
Because people ask me this all the time. I'm like, yes, you can. Of course you can learn. You can learn to play incredibly well
and it's an
at any age.
And it's an incredible thing, because as somebody whose whole life is music, and I don't really have any other hobbies, for me, this, I feel, is keeping my brain really opening, because, as you know, the piano, the keyboard, and the guitar are completely different beasts.
Oh, yes. different
right?
muscles, everything about it.
It's just nuts. I mean, like, first of all, the first guitar, the Strandberg I was playing, I was looking at all these dots and spaces. This is different. Looking at the dots, you're going, I have perfect pitch. All I want to do is I want to know that when I hit that spot, it's an E, right? I'm not thinking like intervallically. That's
Right.
not at all. I hear the note in my head. I know what note it is, and I play it like on the piano.
Yeah.
And when I listen to music, it's almost like there's like, I got this kind of feeling the other day. It's almost like there's a keyboard in my brain that when the notes come in, they go from low to high. So this is a totally different beast.
Yeah.
And for me to get it together and to really wrap my head around is taking a lot of work. But for some crazy reason, I really love it.
Is that because you can play the same note in so many different spots and it's confusing, right?
It's confusing.
That's why guitar players can't read well. That's why it's difficult to read, most guitar players. It's difficult to read on the guitar because you can play the same note in so many places.
Right. And that's why I don't know.
So where do you do it?
And I don't know what it is about my personality. I mean, I don't generally go to do things that are hard for me, but I love this.
Yeah.
So the way that this came together is, the people at Strandberg saw my passion.
Yep.
And saw the kind of, hopefully interesting things that I was starting to come up with on the guitar and using my two hands and, all the kind of things that I do and sharing about the Strandberg. And they were like, oh, we would love to do an artist series guitar with you. And I was like, well, that's extremely flattering,
Yes.
Amazing. So I started to think about what I really wanted. So one thing I thought about is, well, when I play the guitar, I don't know about you or my other friends, but I don't want the note to die. I want to play the note, I want to go, I want it to keep going, right? I love that. And I don't necessarily need like a really distorted sound to me, that's like the coolest
Beautiful.
thing.
It's a sustainer pickup.
Yeah, it's the Sustainiac pickup that's in here. And also what I realized after I got it, it was made, is that I could put a fret wrap on it.
Yeah.
And then I could do my thing at the piano, like on the guitar. And,
There you go.
I have to be careful of the noise still and everything, but I could do this kind of nice thing and play them both at the same time. So the Sustainiac was amazing. And actually, my guitar player friends that try this, a lot of them have never played with a Sustainiac. And they're like, oh my God, I love this. This is magical. This is so cool. Because I don't know if there's any guitars that come with a Sustainiac pickup.
There used to be the Fernandez guitars would have.
I had that, yeah.
would have
But a
one,
lot
yeah.
of people didn't.
Yeah, that was
haven't
very
experienced
uncommon.
that.
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
My friends, I've got so many friends who are great, great players, and I say, play it, try it. And they're like, oh my God, this is fantastic. I love it. So that was one thing, and it turned out beautifully. And the other thing was the whole visual thing. Because again, like, where the hell are the notes, right?
Exactly.
Right. So I thought that if I put patterns on the different frets, that I'd have a better indication of where things are.
Okay.
And I'm getting used to it myself. It's kind of helping. So if I see like this pattern here, I can kind of say, oh, that's similar to this one, and this one is similar to this, and I can quickly kind of put my eyes, and get that visual thing.
Yes.
Which is really, really helpful to me, and I love that. The other thing is the dots are all on E's. So every dot is on an E, and that's kind of cool too.
Oh,
so
nice.
I know that
Nice.
you got right. And, I'm still learning, obviously, but these dots, which I think most guitar players care more about because they're standing up and playing.
Yeah.
I don't. I'm not there yet. Maybe next year I'll be looking at that. But I'm kind of looking at the fretboard. And I wanted to have something really beautiful. Obviously, it was really important to me to have something that was visually attractive and with some visual information. So that's really, this is a Strandberg guitar, but it has this whole these beautiful inlays that were designed by Mika Tiska, who is also known as Mr. Fastfinger. He's from Finland. He's done a lot of the Dream Theater cartoons in the old days, and he's a great player on his own right, but he's also a beautiful artist, and he helped. He's the one that actually originally designed the wizard character, and that's on the 12th fret.
Okay, so you play in a band with one of the greatest guitar players in the world.
Right.
Are you sitting on the bus with your guitar and he walks by and is like, hey, why don't you try this?
He's very nice about my guitar thing, but I don't want to bother him about it. It's too close,
Yeah.
I'm the keyboard player in Dream
He's
Theater.
not sitting at a keyboard and practicing or anything.
No. If I come to him with a guitar question, which I try not to do,
Yeah.
he'll be very, very nice as he is, and he'll answer my question. But I really kind of leave that a bit out of our relationship. And I have so many other friends that are so excited.
You know every
about,
guitar player out there.
I know them all. And you know what's been one of the most beautiful things about this adventure is meeting all these incredible people all around the world. I'm a social person. You know, I like people, especially good musicians. And for me to actually have the opportunity to connect with all these amazing guys out there in the guitar world, it's been incredible. It's been enlightening. It's been educational. It's just been one of the best things that's ever really happened to me. And I'm inspired because Strandberg is so supportive and all my friends are so supportive. I'm inspired to keep trying. You know, it'll take me another 50 years to play like John Petrucci, you know, and I won't be around to see that. but I love the process, and that's just what it's about to me.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Jordan, it's such a pleasure to have
thanks,
you in the
Rich. It's so
studio.
awesome,
You're the
man.
best.
Thank you.
Great. Thank you so
All right.
much.
Cool, man.